Hello and welcome everyone to our latest presentation on esophageal pressure monitoring, how to do it and troubleshooting. Esophageal pressure monitoring or transpulmonary pressure monitoring is very important in clinical practice, especially in trying to reduce the villi and monitor mechanical ventilation. The main objective of it is to trying to titrate the pressure support that is being given, assess the patient for risk of PCL, detect asynchronies. The main objective here is to measure the transpulmonary pressure. The alveolar pressure can be measured by using the airway pressure as a surrogate, but we have no way to measure the pleural pressure. So this pleural pressure measurement, we use the esophageal pressure as a surrogate for measuring the pleural pressure. So once we get that value, we can calculate the transpulmonary pressure. It is the transpulmonary pressure which is the actual pressure that is being applied along the walls of the alveoli, and it is this pressure which is causing ventilator induced lung injury or PCL. Now, is airway pressure a adequate surrogate? Actually, no. In this study, it was seen that transpulmonary pressure had quite wide range of variations, even in normal population versus ARDS population. So using the plateau pressure is not adequate to measure the transpulmonary pressure. Now the main reason is this. There are two basic structures which are present in the chest cavity which need to be overcome before we can deliver the tidal volume to the alveolus. The first is the lungs, the second is the chest wall. Now, the chest wall stiffness can add to the total pressure that is being sent. So in both these cases, as you can see, the peak pressure or the plateau pressure is 30. However, in this case where the chest wall is stiff, 15 pressure is being wasted just to overcome the increased elastance of the chest wall. Now when this happens, even though I am getting a plateau pressure of 30, the actual pressure in my alveolus is only 15. So this variation is very difficult to know when you are using just the plateau pressure as a measurement for finding out what is the alveolar pressure. The transpulmonary pressure can help us in guide the mechanical ventilation that we are giving. The first thing is inspiration. Now the main objective here is to prevent over distension of the alveoli. We must give adequate pressure so that the alveoli is just inflated and it is not over distended. Let's see how can be done. To do that, we need to measure the transpulmonary pressure. Now the transpulmonary pressure, in this formula, we use the plateau pressure minus the esophageal pressure. So the esophageal pressure is here used as a direct surrogate for the pleural pressure. Now, esophageal pressure, the value may not be always directly correlating with the pleural pressure. So it is always better if we use this formula, that is the delta change in the esophageal pressure. Now this has been studied in this particular paper where they used the manometers in the non-dependent and the dependent parts, and they used both these formulas. Here you can see this dotted line is the non-dependent part, this dashed line is the dependent part. Now where the lung is not having much distendability or the lung is more solid, there the formula where the esophageal pressure is direct surrogate of pleural pressure works more correlatedly. However, where the lung is more distendable or the lung is more recruitable, there the delta change formula works better. So as we can see here, the pleural transpulmonary pressure in this case uses the esophageal pressure as a surrogate, and it correlates more with the dependent part, and where the delta esophageal pressure is used, it correlates more with the non-dependent part. Now let's see how it works out in expiration. The main objective here is to prevent de-recruitment or atelectroma. Now this atelectroma is again something which can result in ventilator induced lung injury. So the objective is to keep the pressure sufficient enough that the alveoli is just distended. This can be measured by PEEP minus the expiratory esophageal pressure. Now this is related with the fact that where the lungs is totally filled with inflammatory fluids, there is almost very little effect of PEEP. So in those cases, we cannot titrate the PEEP based on the esophageal pressures. Now here, as we can see, there are two types of lung. The one that is recruitable and which is non-recruitable. If the lung is recruitable, then we can see very good effect of PEEP. However, if the lung is not recruitable, there is almost no effect of giving a end expiratory pressure. Now, where there is no effect of giving the end expiratory pressure, we cannot use the esophageal pressure to calculate the transpulmonary pressure. Now let's see how it can be done. So the first thing that we need to do is to insert the catheter hole inside with the balloon inside the stomach. Now once that's done, you inflate it as per the recommended volume. Different catheters have different recommended volumes. After you have done that, when the patient is on ventilator, you will find this type of waves. Now this is something which you will see irrespective of whether patient is on spontaneous or assisted or controlled breaths, which means that even though there is a positive pressure ventilation or spontaneous ventilation, you will always find this type of wave. This is because the overall movement of the diaphragm in all inspiration remains the same. However, as we pull it up, we will find this type of a change. We will find a negative swing, because now we are in the esophagus, which is more reflecting with the pleural pressure. So this negative deflection will help us in finding out that the tube is in the esophagus and in the correct position. However, if the patient is in controlled mode, then you will again find the same thing. It is difficult to know you have entered the esophagus. However, as you enter the esophagus, there is an increase in the pressure and you can see cardiac artifacts. So this gives a sign that you are in the correct position. Now, how long it has to be inserted? It can be inserted up to 35 to 45 centimeters is the average that is found out in almost all adult patients. The next thing is how much filling needs to be done. If it is underfilled, then the pressures won't be transmitted. If it is overfilled, then there will be over transmission of pressures. So it has to be optimally filled. Now different catheters have different optimal filling and there is very little correlation between them. Appropriate filling will depend on, as I said, on the catheter type and also on the intrathoracic pressure. How much volume is to be given? So here we start with 0.5 ml. We see a delta esophagus of 2.5. As I increase it to 2, it becomes 7. If I increase it further up to 4, it still remains 7. So the optimal is 2. So the idea is optimal filling volume is the lowest volume associated with the largest delta PS. This is very important. The optimal volume of the cuff is the lowest volume that will give the largest delta esophageal pressure. The next is the ratio between airway pressure and esophageal pressure. In spontaneous breath, you can see that there is a delta ES, but if the patient is in passive, then we can do slight chest compression to find these pressures. Overall, this ratio has to be 0.8 to 1.2. Now we can use the formula to measure the esophageal pressures in the expiratory phase as well as in the inspiratory phase. Here you can see in an actively breathing patient, the transpulmonary pressure here comes out to be 17.5 by using this delta PS formula. Now let's see how it will guide us in expiration. As we said, the formula which we use is PEEP minus expiratory esophageal pressure. However, the next problem that we face is as the volume inside the balloon increases, so does the measured esophageal pressure. In patients, the absolute value of esophageal pressure is dependent on the blood balloon filled volume. Even when both are under or overfilled is avoided. So is this, you will get this even with optimal filling. So there is a effect of the amount of volume that is being given to fill. Now there are methods by which we can calibrate this elevated pressure back to the actual esophageal pressure. Now this change is also seen even when you are using low volume catheters. So it is not that using a low volume catheter will get you out of this. This has been seen that these type of variations are too high, and this can result in too much of variation and too much of difference in terms of the baseline to use in clinical practice. Here you can see that changes are going even up to more than 20, whether it is for PEEP or PEEP-LAT. So it is almost impossible to use it at bedside if you do not correct for this change. Now to do this, you have to optimize the balloon feeling so that no balloon overstretching occurs and there is a respiratory swing. Now the next most important thing is to remove the esophageal artifact. Now there are methods like algorithms which can directly do this. So this particular statement for ventilators or monitors which have these things have already said that there must be a synchrony between the ventilator signals, automatic filling and automatic in vivo calibration in future technology, so that this can be used well in clinical practice. However, it is not something that we need to always rely on algorithms. We can do it ourselves also. In this, you just fill your catheter progressively and look at the tidal esophageal swings and stop where the esophageal swings are maximum and stable. This is which we have learned till now. However, look at the best filling volume and subtract 1 centimeter of water for each ml above 1. So once you do that calibration, now you can see that once it is calibrated and the contribution of the volume has been reduced, now this pressure has more correlation and only 2 pressure, so it can be used bedside without any problem. So this becomes more correlating with the standard measurements. So here, as you can see, the best filling volume was 5. So you calibrated the esophageal pressure, that is measured pressure minus 4, since we are removing every one beyond the 1 centimeter pressure. So now you can see that the values are down and they can be now used at bedside clinically. So to summarize, the measurement of esophageal pressure is a surrogate for measuring of the pleural pressure. Respiratory swings and absolute values of esophageal pressures can be used, but they are not valid and they usually work well when the lung is non-distendable. Proper placement and feeling of the balloon in esophagus is very, very important. And we must know how to remove the esophageal artifacts for the absolute values, like the formula we just learned. Now, delta P should be used to monitor patient's activity, especially if you want to titrate your pressure support, P-Cili or asynchrony. We have to limit the inspiratory transpulmonary pressure to limit the lung stress. This has to be done in all patients, and we can use expiratory esophageal pressure to titrate the PEEP. This will prevent de-recruitment and atelectoma, but keep in mind this can only be used in patients who are recruitable. This is not valid in patients who have a stiff lung. Thank you for your patience and check our website for further information.